Yeah, I'll explain a bit about what I'm doing here. What I like to do and what is a thrill and a challenge for me, and I think you have to be challenged when you're making an artwork, because if it's too easy, there's no point. So one thing I don't do with my Bowie artworks is I never use, or I very, very rarely use a kind of well-known clear image, because there's not really any point. They're too familiar. Too many people are doing it. What I actually like, and the challenge for me, is taking a very, very small, obscure newsprint, perhaps, gossip column picture or something from the 70s from a music magazine, where, as you can see, it's all very, you kind of get the idea of the image, but it's kind of unclear. So what you have to do is you have to really look at it, you have to really understand about the face or the features of the person, and then you have to interpret from this small, very obscure image and actually create it as a kind of, it's almost like a transmutation of transmuting base metal into gold sort of thing. So taking something kind of cheap and throwaway and actually using it to create something that hopefully is going to look kind of beautiful, and there's a challenge in doing it, you know, and that's the thrill really for me. I'm not really interested in just photorealistically copying a very well-known image. What I'm doing here, I'm experimenting with charcoal, which is a medium that actually I haven't really used before, but you get some very nice soft effects. And because this image is quite indistinct and soft, I'm kind of hoping that this will be successful in creating the sort of feel of this newsprint picture, but in a sort of in a more attractive, fully realised form.
And at this stage, presumably, you don't know the direction it's going to take. You don't know the final form, or you know what other elements you might add, right?
No, you start off with it's basically starting off just to try and get the feel or the impression of the picture, and what you do with it after. The thing that I find with art, with any art, and any artist will tell you this, is knowing when to stop. It's knowing when to stop, because there's no kind of definite point where an image or a picture is finished. And it's very, very easy, and I've done it many times, and most artists will have done it many times, is to actually go too far and do too much, and you actually ruin something, and it loses the kind of freshness of the image. You've overworked it. It's like the equivalent would be if you were recording a song or music in a studio, overproducing it and over-mixing it, you know, and putting too many effects on. But it's knowing when to stop, really.
I've done it many times with the videos, and had to go back to an earlier version. Yeah,
I mean, it's you know, when you've got no rules and you can do anything, it's kind of, you have to make your own decisions, and you have to just decide. You know, quite often I like stuff when it's half finished, and the mental challenge of making yourself stop and not do any more is really difficult, because you always want to keep working, and it's very, very easy to do too much. You know, I wish I could. I'm still trying to loosen. This is why I'm experimenting with this charcoal, is because it's a lot looser. You can be a lot freer. A lot of my work, I find, has been a bit too tight and a bit too trying to make everything very perfect and every line very sharp. And I'm kind of trying to move away a bit from that. And we were talking about earlier on, I was talking about Walter Sickert, the Victorian artist, who throughout his career at the beginning, he was making very traditional sort of paintings, painting from life, painting scenes of Venice. And then as he got into his later years, and as technology meant newspapers and magazines and things were being printed, he actually started doing what I'm actually doing and taking very small, badly reproduced photographs from newspapers and things, and would actually blow them up onto large-scale, very grand oil-on-canvas paintings, which were exhibited. And I think it's the first time. I think that's the first time that was ever done.
Because he was in the
Yeah.
That was 1930s, so that was at least 2 decades ahead of Warhol. And
Oh,
anybody
absolutely,
else.
yeah. And he'd been around from the late. He was around in Victorian days. In fact, there's a weird theory that he was actually Jack the Ripper. Somebody came up with a theory that he was actually Jack the Ripper, and they sort of reckoned that they had proof of it. But I think that's probably pretty. I think he's more likely to be the first kind of what we'd call pop artist rather than Jack the Ripper.
Do they say that because of some of his subject matter was prostitutes and so on?
Yeah, he was painting sort of Victorian prostitutes around that sort of area, you know, Whitechapel and around there. And I'm not sure. There is a book about it which I haven't read, and I think I can't remember who the writer was now, but I think she's got certain timelines where he was supposedly, but in the right, you know, place at the right time to have done that. But then I think someone came along and disproved it, and I think he was in France or somewhere at one of the dates that was mentioned in this book. So I don't think it's very likely. But as I said, I'm fascinated that he was doing this back in the 1930s and 1940s, and I think he was the first person that had actually done this sort of thing, because it was really not a done thing. You know, it was the art establishment looked down on it. You know, they really didn't think it was a good thing that artists should be using such cheap source material for their paintings. And now, of course, it's completely.
Yeah.
You know, it's completely it's the main sort of subject matter that is used.
So would you say that Sickert is an influence on you?
Only not in terms of that. I saw the exhibition many years ago, and I actually was fascinated by the fact that he was doing this.
Yeah.
And I do love the idea of transformation and the idea of transforming something into something else.
Me too.
So in that respect, yeah, he was an influence, but not really stylistically or anything like that, I would say, but just
as a philosophy,
an inspiration and a kind of philosophy, really. He was a very fascinating character as well. You know, those kind of Victorian kind of dandy gent type of how you'd imagine an artist. You know, when people think artist, they think of those sort of people, you know. It's
this Victorian-looking bohemian.
Yeah, bohemian Victorians. You know, he's probably kind of, you know, that wear a smock and perhaps sort of, you know, have a beret.
Yeah.
Or that. I don't know whether he wore a beret.
Yeah, right. But
not.
that's exactly the cliche that came to my mind.
That's the sort of cliche, yeah. That. But see, what I like about this charcoal is you can get very soft. You can get very soft sort of shading quite easily, which I normally use oil paint to do this, and oil paint is great, but it takes it takes a lot longer. You can build this up, because what I'll do with this is kind of the very basic base layer. I'll continue adding and taking stuff away until I'm kind of satisfied with it. This is from a live photograph from a concert, and again, what I've done with this, it was a really tiny, very, very bad quality photograph, and so the challenge was to actually recreate it as a large artwork and kind of fill in the missing sort of details and things. But yeah, there's just something about the quality of this image. I don't know what it is. It's kind of soft focus, really nice, but harsh at the same time, which is, I kind of find that duality of...
Yeah, right. It's like a camera flash,
it's
but
like
it's still soft.
Yeah. So because normally if you've got a camera flash image, it's normally very hard. But with this, it's, as you say, it's like a camera flash, like a hard camera flash, but for somehow it's kind of got a soft focus, which gives it just a kind of unusual sort of atmosphere about it, I feel. And
that's really nice.
yeah, I'm kind of very pleased with that one. I don't know whether that's going in the book or not. This is another invented back of a limo scene, and I mean, he wasn't wearing these clothes at all, and this picture was from, the face was from something completely different, the hand was from someone completely different, and the car is kind of invented from different elements.
What's the significance of the tie?
Well, he wore this tie in 73 and with a few different, and he wore it again actually, I think in 75. It was one of his Freddie Barretti glam rock ties. But why I used that was I just liked the colour, with everything else being so muted. It was just an experiment in putting something vividly coloured with a very kind of muted monochrome thing. It's purely just a sort of stylised exercise, really. And again, it's not actually a scene from Cracked Actor at all.
Just got the flavour.
It's just to give a kind of atmosphere, really. In some of these, I'm just going for a sort of atmosphere or a feeling rather than trying to illustrate. This final one this is actually, again, from the scene where Bowie has just had the cast taken off his face, and he's calling for tissues for my eyes, which has become another of the catchphrases, really, along with "there's a fly in my milk," tissues for my eyes. There's so many catchphrases have come out of that particular film, and this is that sort of moment where he's calling for tissues for his eyes, and his assistant Coco is handing him, he's just about to grope for some tissues because he can't open his eyes. But it's just something about, I just like the composition of it, the black and white shirt with the stripes. And
now I see it's almost like the helplessness of some of the Thomas Jerome Newton things in a way, right?
There's so many things like that in this that you can associate with the Man Who Fell to Earth, that sort of helpless quality, or somebody that's having stuff done to them.
Yeah, right.
You know, that they're
Rogue
not,
took a lot, didn't he?
They're not in control of. And Yentob told me that it was his idea, before he'd done anything at all, his idea was he wanted Bowie to have a live cast taken, and he did not think that Bowie would go for it at all. And he said, and it's the very first thing they did before they shot anything, and he said, but Bowie just did anything he wanted. He said it was absolutely amazing, because it's not a pleasant process to, and when you think of the condition Bowie was in, a bit paranoid and everything, having a face cast taken would not be pleasant. And Bowie just went for it, and Yentob said he basically was just so amazing, he would do whatever was asked of him, you know. And so it's an iconic scene in that in the film.
Is this the typical order of things, that you would start with the delicate parts like the eyes, do them quite precisely, and then allow yourself the more freeing?
Yeah, you have to get the eyes right.
Yeah. If
the eyes are not right, it's not going to work. If the eyes are right, you can take liberties with other areas of a work. You know, there can be some things which are perhaps not perfect. As long as the eyes are right, you're okay. And but the good thing with Bowie is he had really such striking eyes that once you get the eyes, you know, I think you could see that was him before, while it was only just the eyes there.
Definitely.
You know, so once you get the eyes, you're sort of, you're sort of home and away, really.
So what about on the stylistic level? Are there artists that have influenced you, that you have
Yeah,
admired?
definitely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I went to New York a lot back. First went to New York in 1980, and I was obviously very interested in the whole Warhol thing. And Richard Bernstein, who did the Andy Warhol interview magazine covers, was a big influence on me. Then I went to New York and I started seeing the artists at the time, Haring and Basquiat, and Stephen Sprouse, who was also a fashion designer. Yeah, Basquiat, who's now, you know, really a big respected artist. And at that time in New York, because the city was kind of bankrupt, these people had the most massive studio spaces, and it was a very artistic time. And I was very kind of energized by seeing all of that. And of course, because I was doing a lot of work centered around nightclubs, what I wanted to do was, what I did was the New York, all these artists were involved in the club scene in New York, and it was a much more artistic based scene than the one in London. So when I started being involved with clubs like Trade, I brought in a lot of the influences from what I saw happening in New York and kind of gave them a bit of a visual remix, took elements from various things and combined them with my sort of British sensibility to actually bring in a different kind of imagery for the clubbing world. And that was influenced by a lot of those what was happening in New York. So I guess I looked to New York quite a lot years ago, and it was it was incredibly exciting to actually, go there, because I'd been reading about it in relation to the Bowie stuff and art stuff and everything for, in the press here, sort of back in the 70s. So we don't really know what's happening there, so that could just sort of solidify that at the moment. See, the thing with this hair, so you can't really see you can't really see what's happening. You can kind of, as you gradually do it, you can sort of more pick out. See, you can see I've had difficulties finding out where the edge is because there's a shadow, but the hair and the shadow are blending together. So it's the sort of thing you have to discover as you go along. But
that is the creativity.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge. That's what I enjoy, and that's what makes it interesting to do. It's like a mystery.
Yeah, right. It can't be an exact reproduction because you don't know what the original is.
No, it's not. And what you're trying to do is get get a kind of semi-photorealistic, but without the dryness and the deadness of a photorealism. So I think it's like, for instance, this is quite a lot looser than some of the stuff that I do, but I think it's got an energy to it, which is something that I'm kind of more trying to get into, loosening up. It's very easy to paint yourself into a trap of making everything too perfect. Probably you have the same thing with your films that you make.
Lost in the.
You can just get too obsessed and get lost in trying to make everything absolutely perfect, and it's sometimes it's better to. It's like anything. If you've got to have some imperfections to give something energy and have interest. It's like even Bowie said about your mistakes.
Yeah, right. Planned accidents.
Planned accidents. Use your mistakes, and if you make a mistake, repeat it, and it becomes a deliberate action. So, and in art. There are no rules, so which is great, but it can also be a curse, because if you've got limitless possibilities,
sometimes you almost want somebody to tell you what to do.
Sometimes you want somebody. It's like if you're in the supermarket and you need to buy a particular product, and there's a shelf with 100 different versions, you end up walking out because it's too much. So Yeah, sometimes, you know, you really, that's why if I have a commercial assignment for a club or something, more often than not, they don't give me any brief, but then you have to try and second guess what they're going to want. And I'm always saying to people, look,
Yeah, right.
give me some rule, tell me what you want, you know. But I've realised that people, they know what they don't want when they see it, but they can't really tell you what they do.
In a way, I suppose that's what they're wanting from you.
Yeah, it is in a way. So you just have to accept that that's what they want from you. But it is, you know, you can fall into that trap of trying to make everything too perfect, which this definitely isn't. This is actually going to be the cover illustration of the book, which is called David Bowie and Cracked Actor, The Fly in the Milk. So this was produced actually as the cover shot for the book. And I was kind of, with this image, I was kind of influenced a bit by the look of Rock Dreams, the book by Guy Pollard, who did the Diamond Dogs cover. He did, and one particular picture in Rock Dreams is of Bob Dylan in the back of a limousine at night. And this is not really similar to that, but just the kind of feel of that, of this person in the back of this plush limousine. I kind of wanted to get this airbrushy kind of soft effect that appears in Rock Dreams. So that's the story behind that one.
It's funny, isn't it? Because this would be meaningless to most people unless you've seen Cracked Actor a number of times.
Absolutely.
It's so familiar.
I mean, it just looks like a watercolour of a sort of
A random
mountain. But actually, this is the Yentob and his crew were following Bowie's limousine. The crew were following Bowie and Yentob in the limousine. This is through the Grant Pass in Arizona. The car was going from Phoenix to Tucson, where they filmed the famous sequences of drinking the milk and all of that.
Because you were telling us that you guys tracked the route that the limousine took.
Susan Compo, who I've written the book with, she's an amazing, very accomplished and very established American writer. She traced the actual route of Bowie's limousine through the desert and located the actual gas station where there's the scene where he gets out of the car and stretches his legs just before, and we've got the last photograph of the gas station in its dilapidated state just before it was demolished, I think. I'm not sure when it was demolished, but it was demolished a few years ago, so it doesn't exist anymore. The town is called Picacho in Arizona. So that relates to this particular image from that sequence. Next we have, you know
We
what this
love
was, yeah.
The Space Cadet.
And this is that fantastic girl that says, "I'm just a space cadet, he's the commander." But and she's been in touch. She's always this girl now, and I can't remember her name, but she's actually on Twitter, and she saw this picture and got in touch with me. So I'm hoping to get her to reprise that, make a little video saying that as that we can use when we cut together like promo or something for the book, to get her to sort of do it again now.
That'd be brilliant.
She sounds like a really great person. She still sounds really enthusiastic and she still looks really, she still looks really great and everything. So this is this girl, and I'm really sorry to whoever's watching this, but if she's watching, I can't remember your name at the moment, but we will rectify that. So that was that particular one.
Well, I go along with something that our guy has said many times, that it's the first take that's usually the best one, even though it's technically the worst one.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll think of a video, I'll quickly just bosh something together very quickly and think, well, I'll come back to that later. And then I look at it and it's like, actually, I had the right idea from the beginning. All it needs doing now is a bit of refinement, but the actual composition is already perfect.
Absolutely.
Or it's as good as any other alternate version. But whilst I was compiling it, I wasn't thinking, very logically. just very quickly thrown together, and it turns out that that first instinct was the right one.
Yes, and I think that comes from your it's kind of a subconscious thing, isn't it? You don't realise, and it just happens, and you have to trust that and go with it, I think. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that happens all the time. It really does. You know, and you go back to something and you know, you were right first of all. See, as you can see here, I mean,
hand is difficult, isn't it?
I had trouble for kind of because it's so sort of vague. So you can see all the. So what I'm going to have to do is kind of perfect that a bit more. But I'm not going to worry about it too much because it kind of almost looks like it's vibrating slightly. So I don't know. Maybe I'll maybe I won't worry about that. I don't know. I probably will. I'll probably go home and start fucking obsessing about it, and I'll end up coming back round here at 9 o'clock tonight.
Well, looking at the original of the hand, it's quite an awkward shape, that hand. It's quite an unnatural looking hand. With the way that
it's these fingers. These two are all right. It's these two because they're kind of they're clawed-like, which in a photo that's how they are. But when you do it as a drawing, it kind of people would say, "Oh, well, that doesn't look right." You know.
Yeah, just it's like a little finger.
Yeah,
it's too small.
It looks like it's too small. So so these fingers are going to need quite a lot more work. So probably I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to bother doing too much of those because I need to think about that, and we'll do a bit of rubbing out, I think, because a lot of that is not correct at all. But the great thing with Bowie, with his face, is he had such definite bone structure that you get really great shadows and shading, you know, on his features, which is great for an artist because it just creates such a pleasing effect, you know, the light and shade.
What's the earliest and what's maybe the latest image of Bowie that you've used chronologically, you know?
What, a source material?
Yeah.
Oh well, I was doing drawings in the Ziggy Stardust days, so it would have been Ziggy Stardust. But I soon went on to Diamond Dogs. In fact, the only thing I ever won at school, I did a painting of Bowie. It was a copy of a poster in Sounds of him in the trench coat on the doing Sweet Thing, and I've still got the painting. I'll send you a picture of it.
Please.
And I won the art prize. It was the only thing I ever won at school in '74 for that.
And have you done work on him in other eras, in later eras?
Not really. Have I? I'm just trying to think.
Tin White Duke?
Oh yeah, of course. Yes, obviously. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that I'm showing you all this Bowie stuff because of the film. I mean, I don't exclusively do Bowie, but you know, Bowie was my main inspiration, and I'm not an artist that only does Bowie. So a lot of the time I'm working on much different stuff. But yeah, I would say that I've done Scary Monsters era stuff.
Oh, right.
Yeah, of course I have. I'm just trying to think what I've actually done. I can't even remember. I did a joint exhibition with Boy George for Homotopia in Liverpool back in 2013. And George took some photos of Steve Strange. And what I did was I took the photo, made a large print of George's photo of Steve, ripped his head in half, and did Bowie as the Ashes Piero behind him with the quote, split your pretty cranium and fill it full of air sort of thing, nice. which worked out quite well. I'll send you a picture of that. So yeah, I have done other eras, but I mean, of course, this is my sort of era that I'm more obsessed with really than any of the, you know, the 74 to 75, 76 period.